Okay, welcome. This is going to be a recording for our light fixture project that we are doing. It's going to be a wall sconce. In fact, let me pull over the image of what we're going to try to replicate. Did just a quick Google search. We're going to create this as a light fixture, even though it's technically a candle sconce, but they do make a few variations of this, and we're just going to either imply or we're going to invent the fact that we're going to make this into an electrical light fixture, not just a candle based. Although technically to Revit, it probably doesn't know a difference. It just sees it as having a light source. So let's jump into how we're going to create this. We're going to build a new family. We're going to scroll up and down through our list of various options that we have, and we should have a light fixture wall-based. So this is the first time, at least in this course, that we're jumping from using the generics that the PDF recommended to something that is non-generic in nature. I can't think of too many times when I'm like, I'm going to build something in Revit, but I don't really know what I'm going to build. Usually I have some kind of a purpose in what I'm doing. So in this case, we're going to grab a wall-based, click the open button, and this is instantly going to look a little bit different. I have my crosshairs indicating the vertical and horizontal center, but now I also have a wall. So the wall is my place filler of how this is going to operate when I drop this into the world of Revit and in a situation where we actually have a project. Now, first off, I want to make everybody aware of the fact that this wall does have thickness. Now, they use the generic walls, but you'll also find you have different sizes of the generic wall, which allows you to do what they call flex the model to make sure that everything is going to play really friendly. Let's take a look at this from the left side, because you'll also notice tied to these two reference planes, I was going to say crosshairs, but they're technically reference planes, is a light source. So the important thing to note is that if I don't pay attention to where this reference plane is based on the wall, it will change. So if I take this wall and I switch it over to a 12-inch wall, notice how this light source did not move. That's actually going to work against me when I go to drop this into a project. I want to make sure that that does move with the wall. So if I just wanted to generically drop in a dimension right here and lock that dimension, now every time the inside of this wall moves, my light source is going to move right along with it. So let's try it. Switch it over to the 12-inch wall, and right away you'll notice, okay, now that light source moved with the inside surface of a wall. When you're dealing with wall-based entities, it's important that you consider that. So a lot of times I will lock these dimensions to make sure that it never varies on me. This is actually not going to be where I want this, so I'm going to delete that dimension. I'm going to take this and send it back to my 6-inch wall. And sure enough, we're right back into that situation where this did not move. But let's go ahead and build some of our geometry for our project first. So let's create some reference planes, and I'm going to imply that the thickness of that board that's up against the wall is going to be somewhere in the 3/4 of an inch range. So I'm going to dimension from the wall to my reference plane, and I'm going to locate that at 0.75 of an inch. Now that I have that located, I'm going to lock that dimension so that it never varies from that number. Now, sometimes I have a tendency to get kind of reference plane happy, and other times it's just that I want to make sure that I have all of these random, I shouldn't say random, they're not random, all of these spots that I can push and pull things to. So I'm going to copy that reference plane about 1/4 of an inch. If I could type right, 25. And that's going to be the distance between that piece of wood and the very first item that is going to be the base supporting that candle. So I'm going to take that number and I'm going to copy that over another, let's go 1/8 of an inch for the thickness of the actual base. I'm going to copy that another 1/8 of an inch for the thickness of the glass. And then I'm going to imply that from the outside of this glass, or maybe I go from the outside of the base, I'm going to say that that probably wants to be somewhere in the 4-inch range. So I'm actually going to go to the halfway point. I'm going to go to 2 inches. That's going to be the center of the candle, the glass kind of sphere, not sphere, cylinder that goes around, and for the base itself. So I might give that one a name. I'm just going to call it center. So that way I know exactly what I'm talking about as far as that one is concerned. Here, I don't need to copy the base, but I am going to copy these other reference planes based off of my midpoint or my center. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension absolutely all of these items. And hopefully you're starting to, oops, I hate it when I do that. Let's try that again. You always have to click outside of the dimension string. Otherwise, escape is the same as saying, never mind, I don't want it. There we go. Now those dimensions are in place. And I have a whole lot of these that I just want to lock. I locked one of them. As you create new, you have to remember to go in and lock them all. Those dimensions are now all set. So I could imply that if this is the center of my candle, I would want the center of my light to go right along with, which I do. So I'm going to align those two and I'm going to lock that relationship. So wherever one goes, the other one is going to continue to go. Here I can take my model now and flex it and see if everything is going to play friendly. And my light came with, all my dimensions came with, everything did exactly what I wanted it to do. So I'm going to flex it back just to make sure everything is solid. Flexing that model is important, in my opinion, to do before you ever throw any geometry in, because you want to know if it's going to make a mistake. Let me see the mistake right now so that I can fix it before we get too much further. Let's look at this from a placement side. Let's take a look at our light source. By default, it looks like our light source is going to be kind of an oblong, not circle situation. So you do have variants of this. So here is that elongated shape, kind of giving that look of a linear light bulb. I can switch it over to a sphere. I have variations to that, or I could do a squared look. In this situation, I probably want something that looks more like this. Okay, switches that view over to that. So you can see that from a three-dimensional standpoint as well. There is that cube. In fact, sometimes it makes sense to take a look at this from a floor plan standpoint, from a placement standpoint, and from a left side standpoint all at the same time. So let's go ahead and do so. And let's go up to our view tab and let's see them all at the exact same time. So here's my reference plan. Let's go to our view and let's tile it so that we can see all four of these at the exact same time. So there's my placement side, or actually my floor plan view. Here is my actual placement side, or what looks like from an elevation standpoint. Here is my side view. And here is my three-dimensional view. So I get instant feedback on all of these anytime I draw anything. So let's go into our front elevation, or I'm going to call it the front elevation. According to them, they call it the placement side. And let's create some more reference planes for how tall I want my object to be off of the ground. So let's drop in a dimension here. And I'm going to put my light fixture on average at, in fact, yeah, let's switch this. Let's get rid of this reference plane. Now let's actually use our light source itself as where I want that light source to be on my wall. Do I want it to be at 4 feet off the ground? Probably not. Do I want it to be at 8 feet off the ground? Probably not. If I'm giving that illusion that this is a candle and I want to be able to light the candle, I probably don't want it 8 feet in the air. So I'm going to choose something that I feel is kind of right in the middle. Let's go to about 6 feet. Now, depending upon how tall you are, you might be like, hey, I hate that number because I wouldn't be able to reach that, or that's maybe too low because I want a little bit higher if you're on the taller side. This is where you could and maybe should make that a parametric number. So if you were going to do so, which we're not actually going to, I could say height of light. It's a dimension. Excuse me, I can make that either a type property or an instance property. An instance would be every single one could be at a different height, or I want them all to be the same. I'm all about consistency, so I'm going to make this a type, although I could make an argument that instance would make sense as well. I click the OK button. That has now become a parameter that I could just change as I see fit. So height of light, which was technically already there, but we're okay. Whether you want to go to that point or not, totally up to you. Let's go back to what we were doing, is actually creating some reference planes in here. Let's throw a reference plane here. Let's throw another one here and one on either side, which if I had been thinking about that, I could have just done one and mirrored it to the other side. That maybe would have been smarter, but let's run with it. Let's make this about a board that is somewhere in the, let's go 4 inch total, so 2 inch for half. And do the same over here, reference plane at 2 inch. And let's go ahead and lock those so that it never changes on me. Again, if you were making it parametric, you would not lock those because that defeats the whole purpose of being parametric at that point. Let's throw some dimensions in here for the board that's up against the wall. How tall do we want that board to be? I don't know, 8 inches or so. 4 and 4. Or maybe we should have gone 5 and 5. Now that I've shown 4, that does seem a little on the shorter side. So that seems pretty comparable from a width standpoint and a height standpoint. And again, I am constantly referring back to my inspiration image. So am I making this stuff up? Kind of, because I don't know that that board is 4 inches wide and 10 inches tall, but general idea is getting the job done here. Did I lock those? I sure didn't. So I absolutely want to. Locking those dimensions means it's going to be at a consistent height. So if I wanted to, even right now, I could come through here and change. What does that look like at 4 foot high? There it is at 4 foot high. If I wanted that at 5 foot high, the key here is that I'm flexing my model to make sure that everything is running with. Reference planes do not always move up and down, but remember a reference plane kind of goes off in infinity. So even though it doesn't extend, it still visually will be just fine. And I shouldn't have said it that way. Visually, it's not going to be fine, but it's actually going to work as if it should. So did we start at 6 and then we ended with 5? We could always push it back to 6 if we wanted to. The key here is understanding that there's flexibility in the process. So let's go ahead and start building some of our geometry for the very first time. In fact, you probably should save your project at this point just to make sure that you're not going to lose anything. I'm going to throw it on my desktop, even though I'm going to tell you never put anything on your desktop. I'm going to call this candle wall sconce. I think that's how you spell it. I'm no English major. And let's go ahead and build some geometry. So looking at the shape that goes up against the wall, it's a squared off board. So I'm going to create, and I want to click in the view that I want to create it in. I'm going to go to the create tab and I'm going to create an extrusion. And here I'm going to draw a rectangle. But before I do that, I want to set or pick a work plane. So I'm going to pick a work plane here and I'm going to choose the inside of the wall. And it's going to tell me, hey, okay, if you're going to pick this, you can't draw it here. You got to draw it somewhere else. I already have it open, but I'm still telling the software, this is where I want you to actually build the geometry, open the view. It's already open over here. Now I can go through and create my shape. When I draw my shapes, I like to lock those to my reference planes just in case in the future I decide to make this parametric. It's going to be parametric friendly. If this is truly a one-off build and I'm never going to change it, I'm never going to modify it in any way, you really don't have to do that. But it's good practice to get into that idea. Extrusion start is going to start on the plane that I drew it in. The extrusion end is going to define the thickness of my extrusion, which I believe we said 3/4 of an inch. Let's try this. Whether it's positive or negative, I find quite often that if I try to predict the way it's going to go, it ends up being the opposite. So the only thing you can do is kind of try it and see what happens. And in this case, the positive number was the correct. It worked in a way that was positive, away from the wall, I suppose you could say. From a 3D standpoint, there is my board. From a floor plan standpoint, there is my board. Shows up in every single view. So you get that instant feedback when you do have multiple views open at the same time. Okay, the next item is going to be our little support angle on the bottom side. So definitely not something I would want to draw from a front-on standpoint. I would want to draw this from an elevation or an end standpoint. So I'm going to zoom in here on where my end of my board is going to be. And I'm going to create another extrusion. Now, some people will get caught up in the fact that extrusions have to be squares, and it's like they do, but they kind of don't, because you can draw different shapes in different angles, let's call it. And that definitely does not look right. Why did it do that? That should have been 1/4 of an inch. This one should have been 1/4 of an inch. And let's draw that line coming back. This line is just kind of a place filler in there, the way I drew that in. I'm actually going to get rid of that line because I want to draw a nice inside arc that gives that a little bit of character. That's too much if it snaps all the way to that point. I want something that's just kind of eased. So something similar to that. This is where the object is being drawn from. So here my extrusion start and ends are going to be the same number. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So an extrusion start of -inch and an end of 1 inch is going to make my object, let's try that again, 1 inch. That's going to make my entire object 2 inches wide. So we're going to start with that and see how that looks. I'm going to hit my green check mark to finish it out. And sure enough, I should have paid attention. I need to finish that out. So yep, let's continue. And let's do exactly what Revit just told me I need to do. Now I have a profile that has all of the sides. So now I can hit my green check mark. I get my feedback here that it's done. I get my feedback here that it's done. I get my feedback here that it's done just as much as the view that I was drawing it in the first place. So there's where it's looking as of right now. Pretty happy with that. Let's jump into the next part. So we've drawn the 2 pieces of wood that are going to support everything. Let's start drawing now everything else. So I'm going to go to the create, and here I'm going to use the revolve to build the base because the base is going to be kind of that hollow shell underneath. Let's pull the image across. This is going to come down and over. So the revolve, working that around 360 degrees, in my opinion, is going to be the easiest way to accomplish that. Could you do that out of other tools? Yes, you could. You could do an extrusion and a second extrusion. You could do a full-on extrusion with a void in the middle. So there are multiple ways that you could do this. But I like this idea of using the revolve, and why not? We used the extrusion before. I'm going to draw this over and up, whatever distance I think that wants to be. I'm going to go up maybe an inch. Inch might be too much, but we're going to start with that. I would need to come down 0.875 of an inch to leave me 1/8 of an inch left over and back down. That is going to be the shape that it's going to spin around the axis, which I'm going to draw right down the middle or center of my candle. So here I'm going to hit my green check mark, and that's the result that I got. And that's exactly what I wanted it to look like in all of my various views. So far, so good. I'm okay with all of this. Let's go ahead and create another revolve, which is going to be the cylinder of glass that goes around. So I'm going to draw that up, whatever height I think I want that to be. I'm going to go up maybe 6 inches or so and back over. Not the entire length. I don't know why I was trying to do that, because this is also going to be a revolve right down the middle. So that's going to be the general shape that I wanted it to be. And in this case, the cylinder is going to be pretty basic. I could have drawn this up and kind of expanded it out if I wanted it to look that way. The nice thing about that revolve is it's going to match whatever shape I draw. There's my axis. Once I spin that around 360 degrees, gives me that kind of a look. So I'm okay with it here. I'm liking it here, although I can't really see what's going on. It will once I apply my materials. Let's kind of jump in here and draw our candle, which is our final step here. And I'm going to do that out of a revolve as well, because I'm going to make that candle somewhere around an inch in radius. So a 2 inch in diameter. And I'm going to bring that up a little bit higher than what my light source is. Let's go up to about 3. I'm going to come over maybe 1/4 of an inch and then back down to a height where I know I'm going to get that light source kind of right above the top of the candle. So if I'm implying that this is the wick of the candle, this is going to be the actual lit element, the actual flame itself. I don't want to bury that inside my candle. I'm creating this little recess so that that light source can escape out. So I'm going to draw my axis right down the middle and spin it. And there it's looking kind of exactly the way I wanted to. I can look at this from a 3D standpoint, looking down into the candle, and there I can see that little recessed area where the flame is going to exist. My light source is going to be able to escape out of that part of my light. Geometry is all done at this point. There's nothing else that I need to do unless I want to make changes to. And if I wanted to make changes to, I could, including maybe this is a little bit too tall, so I could pull that back down. That's a very inexact way of moving things. What would have been better is to have gone into the revolve and actually said, I want this line to maybe go down an inch or two. Maybe two is too much. Maybe that should have gone back an inch, somewhere around there. And once you're happy with it, a green check mark, spins it back around. Here it is telling me a light source is inside a solid geometry. It's actually not. I don't know why it gave me that error, but that's one of those errors where I can say, you know what? I know what I'm doing. I can see the light source. Everything is fine. Sometimes Revit thinks it's smarter than it actually is. And sometimes it is smart and sometimes it isn't. Looking around my object, I think everything looks just the way I want it to, so I'm going to save my project. I save often because I never want to get to the situation where a computer freezes up and I just lost hours worth of work. Now, we've only been working on this a short amount of time. We're not into it a full hour as of yet. So if I had lost that and had to redo it, probably not the end of the world, but it's not a habit I want to get into. Now I can look at my object from a realistic standpoint and all that looks great, although it's not really realistic. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my light source and I'm actually going to hide it. So over here, I believe I can come over here to my properties and my light source. I can just take it away. And by taking it away, kind of eliminates that globe, that overarching circle that's kind of getting in the way of seeing my actual geometry. If you see things in this yellow or gray, you know no materials have been applied. So when you put it into a rendering, you're going to get blase, boring colors. We don't want that to be the case. So let's go up to our Manage tab and our materials, and let's start creating some new materials. We have glass already in here, but I always like to create my own. So I'm going to create a new material, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to drop in my initials so that I know it is my material, not Revit's material. And let's call this wood. And let's do that again and again and again. So I'm going to use, I wish you could just rename that right away because I've never created a material and said, yeah, let's leave that default, but teach their own. So we have wood, we have metal. The other nice thing about doing initials is it groups everything together for you. Create new material, and yep, let's rename it. I'm going to call this glass. So I've got the wood that is the board and the support underneath. I have the metal that is the base for the candle. I have the glass that's going to go around. And let's create the actual candle itself. So rename. And I could call this candle, or I could call this wax if I was going with that idea of not giving it specific names. And I have seen people do both options where then instead of calling this wood, they would call it light fixture support board, something like that. So different variations of calling it out by material versus what it's intended to be used with or for. So here I'm going to expand out my asset browser so I can see all of these nice appearance library items that are preloaded with the software. I'm on Wax as of right now, so let's see what we can find as far as candle. I don't think there's anything in here under candle. Let's try it anyway. And sure enough, nothing. Let's try something that is maybe plastic. Even though this is not going to be plastic, I wonder if it's not going to give me kind of the same effect. I don't think there's anything in wax. Let's see. Oh, they actually do have some wax. There you go. Let's use that. So let's use wax natural. Why not? Let's see what that looks like. From an appearance standpoint, kind of gives that off-white look. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that, but let's go with it. I'm going to go over to the graphics tab and I'm going to say, let's borrow that color. So wax is good to go. Let's jump into the wood. Let's scroll up and down through the various wood items. And the one that I like to use for something like this is called driftwood. If I can find it, there we go. Driftwood right there. Kind of gives that very rustic feel, very dark wood grains. From a graphic standpoint, let's borrow it. It's just going to be brown. So this is the photorealistic version. This is just the computer version. We're okay with that. Let's go to the metal and see what we can find under metals. Probably some kind of, I don't think I want brass. I don't want copper. I don't want chrome. I'm thinking maybe something a little bit more. I'll know it when I see it kind of thing. Stainless, I don't think I want that. And I'm down to the bottom of the list. Let's go back up. I don't want steel. Could use something like that if we wanted to. I don't think I want lead. Iron, maybe? Black iron kind of gives that rusticy, kind of dull black look. That might be okay. Let's try that. And then for the glass, let's see what we can find from an appearance standpoint. Under glass, we should have something that is just standard clear glass. If you wanted something that had a little bit of a slight tint to it, go for it. I'm going to use this clear right here. From a graphic standpoint, let's borrow it. Basically going to be white and 80% see-through. So that's okay. I'm going to click the OK button and magically nothing happens. And why didn't anything happen? Because we've not applied colors to anything or materials to anything. So here I'm going to click on the two wood objects, and over here under material, it says by category. I click on the three dots, and here I can say, turn that into the wood. Click OK. It looks like it doesn't do anything, but it actually did. Once you unselect it, you'll see that now I'm dealing with something that is hopefully that really nice wood grain. And this, I think, is just kind of a visual, maybe a graphic card thing that is just not looking great. Do I have that on realistic mode? Oh, I did not. I had it on a different mode. So there we go. I'm getting that feedback of that wood grain. So I must have switched that over to a different display mode. There is the consistent colors or the computer colors versus the realistic. Now, I'm not sure why this is still white on the sides. That should not look that way. I'm going to hope that that is a graphic card issue because it looks like that's maybe just that light that is reflecting so bright on that right-hand side that it was not giving me the effect I was looking for. Okay, let's click on the tray, the base on the bottom, and let's turn that into our metal base. Should look kind of blackish, which is, so if I look at my image, kind of matching to a certain degree, getting close. Let's click on the glass element around the outside. Let's turn that into our glass item. Okay. Now I can see the candle that is behind because the glass is more or less transparent. Let's click on the candle itself and turn that into our wax. And click OK. This object is now drawn. It is now modeled. It is now waiting to be installed into an actual project. So let's save this. This has been saved. Let's close it down. And let's just create a brand new project that is a residential based. Why not? Now, this is a wall-based item, so it's needing a wall to be installed. So let's drop in a wall and let's do something that's got a little bit of style to it, a little bit of brick on a wood stud. Why not? Let's look at that from a three-dimensional standpoint. Let's turn this to realistic mode. And I'm going to see brick on one side. let's throw this light fixture right onto the brick itself. So let's go to the insert, load family. I'm going to navigate to my desktop because that's where I put mine, even though I tell you not to. I do it because it's easy and quick from that standpoint. Now it's inserted into my project. So as I go up into architecture and components, it is now waiting for me. The other nice thing about putting this in as a light fixture is once you get used to these different systems, you can go to light fixture and it also recognizes that it is a light fixture. So we can go ahead and drop that onto our wall. And there we have a very small light fixture on probably a 20-foot high wall, which it is. Well, let's make that 8 feet tall. Now that gives a little bit more of a reference as to what that light fixture looks like based off of real world scenarios. One thing that you will notice is the light fixture works from a geometric standpoint. It works. Is it inserted directly onto the wall? It sure is, because when we designed that fixture, we noted that we wanted it to stay linked to that surface of the wall. The one nice thing about this, though, is when you actually go into a rendered mode. So let's go ahead and turn on our rendering dialog box. Let's use this as not exterior sun. Let's do interior sun and artificial, the artificial being the light fixture that we just created. Now, as I render this, it's actually going to give that light some light and some shadows, and that ain't very good. Let's try just interior artificial only. And let's re-render that and see. And now we've got absolutely nothing. Man, I'm going nowhere fast here. Let's go back to let's try exterior sun and artificial. See what that gives us. And that is just not playing very friendly for me. So that light source, for some reason, I wonder if that's coming back to that error message that it said, hey, this light source is completely within a surface, even though it wasn't. I wonder if for some reason it's still thinking that it is. So therefore, it's giving me no light source. That has me a little bit questioning as to why that is not working. So what that should have done is cast a light coming out of that candle and up against the wall. And it should have given me a really nice glow kind of coming through that wax. I'm not real sure as to why that is not playing very friendly with me. I don't think I want to get into adjusting this because right now that light is not dimmed. 0 would be dimmed, 1 would be turned on, basically. We could, do I want to spend the time to do this? Why not? Let's go into editing this. And let's see if we can troubleshoot as to why it's doing that to us. From a placement side, maybe I tried to get too fancy with it, putting that light source within the candle itself. Now coming back to, I wish I would have put another reference plane in there so I could have moved it individually, but let's take our candle and maybe work it just a little bit shorter. Now there's no doubt that it is outside the object. Let's see what that does for us. Let's save this family. Yep, let's go ahead and replace it. Let's load it back into our project. Let's overwrite its parameters, and you'll notice the candle just got a little bit shorter. Let's see what our render does for us now. And maybe it'll fix everything or do nothing. And it does nothing. You got to love it when that happens. I don't know how much time I want to spend on trying to fix this, but I do also want this to work correctly. Let's go back into, oh, light source is not being shown. Maybe it was turned off then because of, ooh, could it be that simple? Let's save this. So maybe while I was in the project, I could have just turned that light source back on. In fact, edit family. So now let's try it again with the render button. And if this doesn't work now, we're going to say, you know what, we'll troubleshoot this in a later video. And sure enough, I get nothing. That's very disappointing. Is my sun just too much for the artificial? This gives me just a black background. We are not cooking with oil at this point. So this is just kind of working against me. So enough is enough. The light source is not going to work too friendly for us, but the actual project is. I don't know why that is showing up as hollow. I wonder if this is just graphic card kind of freaking out on me. Consistent colors is good. Realistic mode was fine. So that has me very worried that maybe my computer's about to crash. Usually, when it starts doing very unusual things like that, I save and I potentially think about a restart. But hopefully, if nothing else, this gave you a little bit of that insider information as to how you could start to create a very custom light fixture that is anything that you want it to be based off of an inspiration image found online or anything else that you could possibly want to come up with. So hopefully this helps. Appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.